Alright, so welcome to tutorial number 3 here. Today I'm going to be showing you excuse me, today I'm going to be showing you 3 things. Simple respawn script, how to throw projectiles. I know it's been covered before, but it's going to kind of tie into what the last thing, and that's physics and bouncy materials, which if you consider cloth into that category, gives us a lot of possibilities of what we can do. So let's start right out here, and I've got a simple little first-person controller. Just made a little terrain, and first thing we're going to do is check out the respawn script. And if you look here, it's very simple. It's just using the standard update function. We have 3 variables controlling our X, Y, and Z, which if you look at our first-person controller here, we have position X, position Y, position Z. So that's what those are going to control. So if transform.position.y, the y value of our character drops below a certain value, in this case I have it set to fall distance, which actually if you set up a global variable and then just use it for your script, when you attach it to the player, as we must do, continue, you will see that the variable, the actual distance to respawn can be changed. So, if I jump off the map at -10, I'll respawn at 75, 20, and 180. Or if I jump off the map, I can fall for X distance. And that's just a cool thing to do to keep things simple there. So back to the script. We just call them out straight up. Transform.position.y is local y, which is the variable up here, which is set to the value. So that's our respawn script. So real quick, let's just test it out. -21. Who knows where we'll spawn? Actually, let me set this to 0, 0, 0, and make that 20. Make that 2 and 2. So here we go. La da 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 da, and oh, there we go. Back on the Earth. Alright, so that works. So now you can respawn things that fall off the map. Actually, if you wanted to create ever-falling objects, that would be one way to do it. Just have it spawn in the air, add some directional force to it, and once it dropped below a certain point, just have it respawn back up there. Maybe even just a random place. I'm sure you could put in some random algorithms, get some random things. But anyway, moving on. So now that we can respawn here, let's go and look at the little tossing script I have here. Throwing things is a little more complicated. We got a couple variables here. We got a variable ball prefab, and that variable is only going to have one thing that it can do, which is transform, which is essentially move, if you remember from the respawn script. Ball force is going to be with how much force the object is launched. This timer is so that when we mash the mouse button, it doesn't just unload as many as we can click. It actually is gonna, click, have a couple millisecond delay before you can fire another one. So if input button down, fire 1 is the assignment, which is the left mouse button. Fire 2 is the right mouse button, and you can define that up in the from the build settings from my last video. So if we press the button down and timer, which is set to 0 plus 0.5, so if 0.5 is less than time.time is a function for the current time, so we're just calling that. So if 5 seconds has passed between the time being set, which is set down here at the end of the function, then variable ball equals instantiate. That's the function you use to create objects. Ball prefab is the name of it, which is up here. Transform.position, which is what we need to have it move, because the instantiate function has 3 things: the what, the how, and the rigid body, as I've commented up there. And the last thing just basically gives it a rigid body. It's quaternion math, and all you need is the quaternion identity. The shot timestamp just assigns a current time, because time.time again calls the current time, sets that to that. And this is just adding force to our object. We're calling on the ball because it is right here. It's a variable. So ball.rigid body, because that's what we're manipulating within the component that we're manipulating on the object. be the rigid body, and adding force transform.forward in the, that would be the x direction, times ball force, which we can define up here again, so that when we attach this script to the player, we can control how much it gets thrown. Real quick, we have to assign the ball prefab, so let's just make a ball real quick, sphere, and assign it to particle system. Assign it to the main camera component, the ball. Alright, and let's try it out. And they aren't launching because when I created the sphere here, I did not create a physics rigid body component. And the rigid body, if you remember, just basically makes things be affected by physics. So there we go, it's working. So now that we can throw that, let's quickly move on to cloth. Cloth, never messed around with it, is pretty cool. It's quite buggy at the same time, but it's still something worth mentioning. It's going to be under game object, create other cloth. So we get a big swash of cloth here. Let's just move it, and without anything really happening, it'll simply just pass through everything. What you need to do is you need to add a collider. So you come here to attach colliders. Let's just have 3 total. The first collider we need is this right here, and anything that's green gets physics applied to it. So we want to make that the collider. That's the cube. So interactive cloth under collider. Let's just drag in the cube. Two-way interaction. They interact both ways. The cube interacts with the cloth interacts with the cube. And tearable is literally the vertices tear away from each other. So this tearable makes it really buggy at times, so it's kind of just use at your own risk. So let's just see what happens here, and looks like it passed through again. It's kind of hard to see because the lighting, but let me move on to what I really wanted to show you, and that's creating things like a tapestry or a carpet that you could maybe jump on or jump through or bounce things off of. So let's rotate this a little bit here. Create another cube. Just something to hang it from. Alright, and line this up. Alright, and let's just go ahead and attach it right there. So again, right here, collider, none. Go to the cube right, that's the first cube. Usually I label it, but I'm just in a rush right now, so attach it there. It's a collider now. Attached, that should be fine. Let's add the thickness up a little bit, and this is basically like, so it goes from being tissue paper to a higher value, maybe like carpet, to something incredibly thick like earth, I don't know. So up the thickness, use gravity, self collision, that's so it collides with itself as opposed to folding in on itself, and as you see, it stays right there. And because it's so thick, it's kind of having some difficulty staying or bending all the way, which is fine. It's actually kind of an interesting effect. As you can see, the balls will interact with the cloth as well. So let's move it down just a little bit. This might be a little more interesting. And rotate both of these. That's not what I want to do. There. And okay. Move it. And let's actually add a mesh to this real quick. Sure, just something interesting, something that gives it some depth. There we go. Alright, so now that we can actually see it, let's launch the, oh, it's like silk. As you see, wow, that gives a really, really cool effect. Let me just show you it tearing real quick. Tear, the interactive cloth up here. Again, like the thicker it is, the more force it can take. Like, if I increase this to 5, and you can also assign, like I could have it assign a sphere here and have it tearable to spheres, but maybe not the player, I could assign as many elements as I want here, 5. Doesn't really matter. These things are all kind of just, self-explanatory. You can look on the online thing to learn more. Tear factors, its likeliness to tear. Don't really want to mess with anything else, except for maybe stretching stiffness, lower it a little bit. So let's observe and launch. And you see it's a lot more rigid. Takes a little longer to settle down. As you can see, the balls do pass through, which I don't think should be happening. If I wish there was a way so you could kind of take it like a net. Maybe if I increase the thickness up a little more. No, it's not even doing anything. Oh, it's apparently so rigid it can't even move. But again, the balls shouldn't be passing through, which is strange. And lastly, I just want to show you the materials. You go to material here for any collider, and you can give it the bouncy property. And this is in the physics build settings. You can change the values of, say, bouncy and wood and all that, and it just defines how these things react. So let's make the floor, actually let's make the cloth bouncy. This could be interesting. Mesh right here, it needs to be material, so you probably can't do that. So let's just make the ground here instead. And if you have two objects that are bouncing off of each other, they probably bounce forever. Unless you define some friction. So as you can see, it's very, very bouncy. You could probably make a game where you launch balls at platforms and bounce them off of each other, kind of mini golf kind of thing, trying to get to a hole. I don't know. It's an idea. Going back to this cloth, let's increase the speed of how fast we launch these. You could also lower the density, or the force equals mass times acceleration. So lower the mass, increase the acceleration, and the ball's gonna have a lot more force. Oh wow, yeah, that's like a bullet. That's kind of cool. You can make a cannon that way. Interesting. But yep, that's it for just some basic physics and launching stuff and the respawn script. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Have any questions? Let me know, and see you next time.